Hello, everyone, and welcome to this mini series where we are launching the first tracking challenge. And the primary goal of today, as you're going to hear from a series of different thought leaders and various first responders and PhDs and doctors, is to help the potential competitors applying for this challenge understand the first responder perspective for the importance of indoor 3D tracking and to kick off the training and education program to the start of this ongoing challenge. Captain Kirk McKenzie here is going to run us through a little bit more about what the challenge is and some of the partners. And we're really excited for you to learn from all these different thought leaders in the industry here today.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And it is $5.6 million worth of prizes on the table for this, a 5-phase challenge where no competitor will be excluded in the first couple rounds. And on the way to phase 5, which will be an on-site evaluation to know, are we able, within a meter accuracy being the goal, to track first responders in X, Y, and Z axis, or in 3D, if you will. And would you go to the partner page here, Kevin? The process is being done in conjunction with the Indiana University Crisis Technologies Innovation Lab. The funding is coming from the National Institute of Standards and Technology Public Safety Communication Research Group, with some other really key partners. Super excited to bring on board some of the excellent speakers we have to talk about why is it important that we know where our personnel are. All right, thank you so much, Stefan and Dan, for joining Kevin and myself today to talk about 3D tracking, the challenge put on by Indiana University, sponsored by NIST PSCR. And I'm gonna get right into it to two mentors and colleagues that are leading the space in smart technologies with a background in fire. And Stefan, I think you're more than 25 years as a chief officer in Europe. From your perspective, would you give the viewers a little perspective on why knowing first responders' location, including the Z-axis, is important?
Okay, thank you, Kirk. So for the audience, I'm Stefan. I'm a European, Berlin state person. I'm a retired deputy fire chief of the Berlin Fire Department, and I'm a CEO of a fire safety engineering company. So I understand both sides, the side of the technology and the developers, and the side of the users, the first responders. So the first quote could be, indoor tracking helps to give some overview insights. What happened behind my black box, my burning house, or my building that only exists in my brain or in my mind. So indoor tracking helps me to have an overview and generally give me some more light in the darkness. So that's maybe the starting point. So but the better question is, who needs indoor tracking? It is only for the end user in the fire or in the house, or is this only is this for the master of ceremonies, for the incident commander?
Absolutely.
Who needs indoor tracking? So who's the commander, who's the controller?
Absolutely.
For the beginning, that's my statement, my opening statement.
Yeah, good.
It's good. The light in the darkness. Indoor tracking.
Good point. And I like the analogies for bringing light to the darkness, Stefan, and bringing situational awareness for the incident commander. And Chief Dan Muncie from San Bernardino County, I think the largest county in our country, maybe covering a couple million souls, more than 1,000 firefighters, like 20,000 square miles. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, or add more to that. And then as a incident management team leader, please give us your perspective on why 3D location is important.
Yeah, thank you. And I think Stefan brings up some great points on who needs 3D location tracking. And it certainly isn't just for the incident commander. Although for me, in my current role and having spent a lot of time as the incident commander, it is important to know where our folks are. And it's really important when we have a downed firefighter or a mayday that we have a situational awareness where we can immediately do that human intervention to get the rapid intervention crew to that firefighter to assist them. So knowing that Z-axis, that's been the holy grail. I mean, we can track firefighters in the X and Y with some degree of simplicity, but getting that up and down, that vertical motion is important. So one thing I'll encourage the viewers of this video is you're thinking about the Z tracking, also be thinking about the complexities of the building construction, the fire environment itself, and make sure you're doing robust modeling and testing on a wide variety of different types of constructions. So who else needs it? The firefighter. Interesting enough, as we're getting into heads-up displays, the firefighter also needs to know their location in a building. And I know that sounds a little weird, but when you're under fire conditions, when you have no visibility, we've always relied on our equipment. Usually that's the hose line, which we don't want to lose our touch with, because that's our way out, or a rope that we're using in certain scenarios, or maybe it's a wall. But as we're creating the heads-up display and able to tell the X and Y and Z of where we are personally, then that's going to help our operations. Finally, that adjoining forces concept. We don't want to be cowboys in the fire service. We want to make sure we have very coordinated attacks, very seamless operations. So I'll tell a quick story. About 13 years ago, one of my good friends, who I spent a lot of time in training with, went to the fire academy, was performing a search in a residential structure. There was a fire between the exit and the room that he was in. And while he's doing the search, somebody very well-meaning put a positive pressure ventilator in the front door and went to the window of the room where he was searching and breached that window. The fire overran his position and he died. Now, with the operational awareness of where are the firefighters as you're undertaking your actions, if you're on the roof and cutting a hole and you're about to drop a section of the roof in because you can't pull it, knowing where those firefighters are is just as important. So with this technology, it's about saving lives. It's about preventing bad stuff from happening. I couldn't be any more pleased with this challenge.
And I wanted to paint, just to expand on that a little bit. You brought up the who needs it, and you paint a little bit to the why, but just to paint a really basic picture, why is this technology needed for both responders inside buildings and for those outside the building?
I would recommend that we a little bit deconstruct this black box of opportunities. So first, let's deconstruct in a technical way. So when we find the holy grail to track persons indoor, so indoor tracking, so we can't not only deliver a position of the first responder in the house, we can bring situational awareness inside and outside for safety things, but also for backing or bringing additional information to the person. So I can say, I give you an order, go 100 meters to the next door, and the system supports you, assists you in your task. So it's not only when the system tracks you, it can help also to assist you where you are, what around you, which is a lot of enhancements in the opportunity box that we can deliver. So head-up displays, temperature, changing commands, or visualizing some very important information for the building. So tracking is an enabler for more future opportunities around digitization. So on a technical thing, indoor tracking starts an innovation journey. So on another hand, that I would say another part of deconstructing is what happened when we know where is my team, where is my line of study, where are my service members. So it's changed a little bit the way how we work today. Today, the incident is sometimes adventure. It's a black box. It's not only bravery or cowboys, but yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty. So a complex situation, a lot of blind spots, a lot of risks. So when I now know in lifetime, in real time, what happened, it's changed a little bit the way how we control and command. So is our influence as a battalion chief or incident commander, what happened when I say, oh, Stefan, you are wrong, or team one, go left or go right. So it's changed not only technology, it's changed team and tactic behavior. So it's also important that we understand what happened when new technologies like indoor tracking or 3D mapping or whatever, when this is arise on the horizon, it's changed dramatically the way how we work. And we need also a culture of change inside of the departments because it's changed a little bit the way how we decide, the way how we give some control out of our hand. So when the incident commander today says, I trust you, go in the house and rescue all the people that you find. So it's a 20-minute blind spot. You have your masks on, you go in the house, and then you are alone based on our experience. But with indoor tracking, what happened in this context? Oh, I find here persons. Oh, there is a closed door. So it's like a puzzle. More and more information's becoming visible. And this information overflow based on indoor tracking is also a challenge that we should tackle. So my quote here is, let's deconstruct the old world. Let's also deconstruct the potential new world, and then look on each building block and understand what has changed, which change happened in the context of these new technologies. Technology is an enabler or not, and not a driver. So the driver is the change that we also allow.
That's excellent. Well said, Stefan, about the adaptation of the technology to be useful to us. And Chief Muncie, thank you for sharing from your heart about the loss of your comrades, still very, very fresh. And after all these years, and having reviewed many dozens of loss reports about, and remembering when I started 30 odd years ago, only the captain had a radio. And we thought, well, when firefighters all have radios, well, everybody will have communication and we'll be good. Well, it's not so simple. It's complex, and communication alone, two-way voice, is not enough. And so here we are working on this challenge that Stefan very accurately points out is simply one facet of a greater smart ecosystem, knowing where our folks are. And I'm going to go to you as a command officer, Dan, that with some experiences. How are we going to adapt? Right, we had ICS 100, 200, 300, all the different incident command and NIMS and command structure classes. How are we going to adapt for these oncoming technologies like location, and change our strategies and tactics, as Stefan says?
It's an interesting question. Through leadership first, and it's got to start at the top, and that's why I'm so engaged in these conversations, is if we're not visioning the future and saying this is where we're going to go, and we're not meeting with our partners, the innovationists, the tech, great tech companies that are out there developing this products, and we're going to be left behind. And there's a reason why the fire service hasn't adopted technology to the rate that they should today. And that's because of the lack of engagement with the leadership. It's my wife just got a brand new BMW, and if you're driving the BMW, there's a heads-up display that tells you exactly where you are and where to go. And it tells you a lot of other information. This technology is on my smartphone. It exists in my kids' bedrooms and in the Internet of Things everywhere that we're at, but we don't bring any of that back into the fire service. So as leaders, it's visioning, and it's meeting with the futurists that understand the possibilities, and then it's bridging the gap. You need to start in your training divisions. You need to start developing the curriculum on how to use that technology, and develop champions in your organization that says, hey, this is great. This is a great new object. This is what we're going to do. This is going to save human lives. This may save you if you get in trouble. This may prevent people from getting hurt. You need to find the successes of when that technology is being used in your organization. And when you find that success, make sure you broadcast it, make a big deal out of it, celebrate it, to institutionalize that technology back into your organization. So there's a variety of ways of change management as a leader, but to my peers, we need to be leaders. We can't just ignore technology or let the bright and shiny object be implemented in organizations. We need to be purposeful in studying the outcomes. And in the case of X, Y, and Z tracking, is there anything more important? because this leads directly to firefighter safety, to loss of human lives. And as Stefan said, it's the building block of all the other future technologies, the AR that we're going to need. You got to have the location services first.
Oh, beautifully said. And thank you for being a leader in the space. And I'd like to acknowledge you in the moment for being the chair of the International Association of Fire Chiefs Tech Council, and Stefan, a member, and Kevin. Thank you all for each of your leaderships in those roles. And to Kevin, as from smartfirefighting.com and from a team that works with fielded commercialized technology partners, some of your thoughts on what the teams want to prepare for as they improve their TRL or technology readiness level, and they are, maybe you've been working on their applied research and they're ready to go test it. What more should they be thinking on? Because at the end of the fifth phase of this challenge, there's $1 million award, I think more than $1 million for first place prize to get them in the field. Thoughts for you?
5 million total available. So
5.6,
not $0, quite a bit. But I think when I talk to entrepreneurs and innovators all the time, often it seems like they want to do it all and they want to accomplish a lot. But one thing that I've really appreciated from Sunny in this competition is that you don't need to do it all. You can just be a piece of the puzzle. And with something like this, good entrepreneurship and innovation starts with an idea. And sometimes people say, hey, ideas aren't anything. But in this competition, we really do want ideas, because you can plug in as a piece of the puzzle. And I think it's looking yourself in the mirror and being like, I can't do it all. I have self-awareness and knowing that I am just a piece of the puzzle here and going to work with a network in community of entrepreneurs here. And from a commercialization standpoint, I see all the time where people will sit in front of a whiteboard and come up with all these ideas and talk about how there's X amount of fire departments and X amount of firefighters. And if they all pay $10 a month, then I'm going to be a rich millionaire for the rest of my life. And while that sounds great and all, I think it really comes down to needing to think about how are you truly bringing value to the fire service, and how are you making their lives better, faster, safer, smarter. Technology is supposed to make first responders smarter and better. You don't want to make their lives harder. And I think oftentimes we forget to actually have conversations with first responders, whether it's just going to the fire department and shaking hands and just talking shop, or actually participating in events like this, or going to the FDICs and IFCs, FRIs of the world. That's where it's really important. But this is a unique competition to plug yourself into an ecosystem. And so I'd like to then parlay that into a question to you, Chief Muncie, of your thoughts on entrepreneurs that want to get started. They can have good intentions. And what would you say to someone that wants to help here, but doesn't really know where to get started, and maybe is sort of earlier on in the phase of they've got maybe a initial idea or initial prototype and they want to help, but they're maybe running in circles, or they're kind of they're sitting on the starting line. What would be your message be to entrepreneurs that want to get involved with the competition like this?
Wow, I just actually had this conversation with a venture capitalist this morning on the approach. So I think a good step is being involved in this particular competition. You need to challenge yourself. You need to surround yourself with great people. My mom always told me in high school, you are who your friends are. And I realized later in life how important that is as a fire chief and as a person. Surround yourself with a great team. Don't be shy. Reach out to individuals, ask for advice. Piece of the conversation that I had with venture capitalists is make sure that you're talking to the right people in the industry. There's a lot of people out there that think they know, or they have a very small perspective, whether it's on a small fire department or they may have a huge fire department. But to make sure that we're having those well-rounded conversations, focus on the outcomes. Don't focus on the product. What is it that you intend to do? Make sure that it's actually going to fit a hole. You need to do that gap analysis. Too many times somebody's watching TV and they see a wildfire and they say, oh, I know what I can do. I can do satellite detection of fires, and then I'll know where these fires are going to be. Well, there's a lot of people in that space. What is the outcome that you're looking for? So there's just some of the processes that I think to be involved, that continue to put a smile on your face. Do go to those trade organizations. Reach out to us at the International Association of Fire Chiefs Tech Council. A lot of experts. Study the industry, see what's there, do a good gap analysis, meet with the right people, And thank you for your enthusiasm, because we need entrepreneurs in this space.
Absolutely. Just as we need the enterprise teams and the VCs, and thank goodness for, as Kevin mentioned, Dr. Sonny Kirkley, who's a project manager at Indiana University. Dr. David Wild is the principal investigator. And I'll say one quick thing and then I'll ask for closing comments is just yesterday, I got to get on a call, and I want the competitors and folks to be aware that the challenge is the JSON data, if you will, the JavaScript data of where the firefighter is. The challenge is rather than focused on the graphic user interface, that'll be handled separately. It's where is the first responder, EMS, law enforcement, or firefighter. That is the challenge, knowing their location and being able to stream that data to a common operating picture. But it's just just their location is all the challenges immediately about. And thank you very much for your time, Stefan and Dan. Closing thoughts, Stefan, on this challenge and what's next?
So what's next? So my innovation or my invention is story interoperability. So the different stakeholders from industry, from the startup, from the departments need to understand the feasibility. So what's the story? What's the goal? So create user stories like I will build that and that in the role of a first responder in the line of study because so storylines, creating that users can adopt the idea and understand what's the goal, and then create small parts of the bigger story, and then let's bring this all together. So tracking is a challenge, network is a challenge, bandwidth is a challenge, user interface is a challenge, the different sides of the 360-degree world is a challenge. Who consumes the data? Who makes the decision? Which data is important to infuse in the front of the head-up display? It's a complete new ecosystem. So when the firefighter is interested in the right way inside of the building, the data is not coming from the department. The data is coming from the building. So it's a brand new business of data creators and data lifecycle managers. They are interested in to support the public safety users with all of this content. So it's a world of opportunities. And the important fact is, inside of this traditional public safety service, that's the cool thing. So we are not the stopping point of transformation. We are the enabler of the transformation in the context of smart cities. So that's my closing remarks. So
love it.
Don't stop now.
That's it. And a great reminder on that location is simply one facet of the suite of smart solution sets that need to be built.
One of hundreds of opportunities.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. And Chief Muncie, closing thoughts.
Yeah, you mentioned something that I'm going to expand on. You said that the X, Y, and Z tracking on a common operating picture. That certainly is important. But there's one thing I don't need is another common operating picture. Don't try to be the new Tesla. Remember, there's some great Fords and Chevys that are out there. Make sure that your product is augmenting maybe a great product that's already out there. Partnerships and operability is so important. Remember, as a firefighter, I don't want to switch between screens. I don't want to have multiple displays. I want to be able to have the information that I need when I need it, displayed in a way that's not going to be distracting me from the task at hand, which is fighting that fire. So don't think that you need to reinvent the wheel. The wheel is round. It works really good. And there's some great companies out there.
Yeah, well said. And a couple points on that is, yes, agnostic. Please build an agnostic solution. And then
yes.
The other part to that was the collaboration. That the whole point of this challenge is to bring people together. Please send in a letter for phase 1, get to phase 2, and no one will be excluded. Everybody's invited to phase 3 before before the challengers are refined, and they may re-team with other teams that were separate. And so the point is collaboration.
Kirk, the answer is tell the right questions. Learn to tell the right questions. Say, hey, I'm curious to understand. So sometimes only on the display side of the authorities, we think things, oh, like we need a centralized command system to control every person. No, that is sometimes not what we want. It's like then says our experience over years, that is a very important influence for developing new technology. So listen to the different stakeholders, teach the others on both sides or on all the sides what is relevant. So one talks about JSON scripts, the other talks about firefighting in a flashover. So different world, different languages, different understandings, and how can we harmonize that together? So to move forward.
One thing
as
now,
well as one last thing, as well as for EMS and law enforcement. Well, we're fire focused. Everybody in public safety. Yes.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Kevin. Yeah, and what last thought from Kevin?
Yeah, and one thing I heard this from Chief Muncie and from you, Stefan, is in a lot of ways focusing on the outcome. But I think one term that we've alluded to but haven't said specifically, it's kind of been trending now, is the concept of actionable insights. There's so much data that's being created. There's all these different new hardware nodes and new software. But again, our brain can only process so much. And if all this data and all this new technology isn't created and turned into something that can be a red or green button or spoon fed to actually be used in the field, and again, from this competition, dealing with first responders, you'll be able to experience working with first responders that know what it's like to be in that life or death situation. So you have to think about how whatever you're creating actually helps in the moment create actionable insights that makes their life better, faster, safer, more efficient, not the reverse.
And Kevin, and that's the interesting point, and that's a tipping point. Tracking starts a journey for artificial intelligence. When I look through the sensor and know where I'm, also artificial intelligence can say, oh my gosh, please stop here or go out. So we should learn, can we trust data? Can we trust human machine interfaces? So my personal assistant assists you and give me some advice and find out things they are not seen in all of my pressure on my heart, and when I go through the darkness and the smoke and the fire and the hot water, so all this together, so create a lot of new opportunities. And so the network starts with the 3D tracking person.
Super inspiring, you guys. Thank you so much for being co-leaders and co-explorers in this adventure, and look forward to carrying on through the challenge with you guys and getting your voice again as we move forward. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Great to have Chief Tubbs with us. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now, if memory serves, Chief Tubbs has roughly 43 years in the business, a board of directors member for the California Fire Chiefs Association, and a thought leader in the technological space. And Chief, we're so glad to have you to help the competitors, the venture capitalists, the enterprise teams, and the fire departments that'll join this First Responder Smart Tracking Challenge to understand why it's important to know where we are. And I'd say the first question to you is, are there anything that you've seen in the distance or any personal emergencies you've been on where you think the outcome might have been different if personnel, if incident command or others knew where their personnel were in X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to have to go way back early in my career when this challenge was first exposed to me. And at the time I was working for the Mercer Island Fire Department, which is a neighbor to the city of Seattle. I worked in Washington for 36 years. And you may recall a fire there in Seattle that called the Pang Fire, warehouse fire, where we lost 4 Seattle firefighters. And one of the outcomes from that event was the introduction of what was called the Passport Accountability Program in King County. And this was a series of tools that ultimately was a tracking mechanism, a manual tracking mechanism, so that the IC or a division commander or staging, whatever the various groups were, could track both the inflow and the outflow of personnel. And these tools provided that accountability so that at any point in time, whether we received what was called an EMER signal. So we were operating off the 800 megahertz radio, and there was an EMER button, emergency button. You push that button, that radio had a specific ID, and we could very quickly, by the passport, link that ID to a firefighter, what unit he was on and where he was located on the fire ground. The significance of that was in the Pang fire, we did not have that. And so accounting for the personnel proved to be a very challenging event for the firefighters at that fire. I did not respond to that fire, but as a partner agency, obviously we felt the impact of that and had many friends who worked in Seattle. So for me, as I came up through the ranks, especially as battalion chief, when that responsibility was bore on my shoulders, as you can imagine, for every fire officer, our personnel safety is number one, and having that that ability to track people accurately at a moment's notice is critical. What's been missing, obviously, over the years is how do we do that actually inside of a structure or inside of an event? So I spent 20 years on a FEMA USAR team, same kind of concept inside a structural collapse zone. I may know my firefighters are generally in a particular area, but other than that, I don't have the ability to track where they are. Plenty of incidents across the U.S. Fire service history. I think that really demonstrate the importance of this, whether we're talking about the Worcester fire or any of these fires, the Sofen fire that we had in South Carolina. All of those, I think, really reinforce the importance of the ability to track live where are people at on all three of those axes.
One thing that I've heard, and we heard it from Chief Nam in the previous call, he brought up the Worcester fire, and you just brought up the Pang fire, is we know some of these challenges have happened for a variety of reasons, but one of them is being knowing where the personnel is and understanding where they are. Why is it that we've had these situations happen and we haven't fully seen change, or we haven't, maybe not even from a technological standpoint, but from a cultural standpoint, embraced new technology that can help prevent some of these disasters from happening tomorrow or in the future?
That's a great question. I would first say that, the fire service is always willing to embrace things that improve our ability to provide services and provide safety for our personnel and civilians. I think the challenge for the fire service, especially around technology, sort of lays in two lanes. One is, and I came up in the fire service before there were computers and technology, and seeing the introduction of that into the fire service, how long that took, in part because of funding, and also in part because initially technology was really designed to address the needs in the private sector, not the public sector. Thankfully, I'd say certainly over the last 5 or 10 years, we've seen an acceleration in the public sector, and that's exciting to me because I think now one of those obstacles is being addressed. Funding continues to be, I think, a challenge for public safety agencies, many of which really operate on a very thin margin with regards to their budget. They don't have a lot of room to test new technologies, to take risks in that lane, or even for a fully vetted system to purchase it, short of having alternate funding streams like grants or different types of opportunities like that, whether they're donations from the community or what.
Well said. Those are consistent lanes across many jurisdictions in fire, and I think also in law enforcement, who absolutely, some jurisdictions I see are a bit ahead of us in the technology integration, and then in EMS, who are ahead in some components and maybe not in others. But as we look at this challenge of knowing where personnel are, which I think is everyone that we've had today has been real clear on the discussion of, oh, it's important, it's going to be valuable, it's certainly going to be valuable with a multiplier, if you will. There's, say, one firefighter for about 1,500 community members on average across the US and really pretty much around the world in developed countries. And so there's a multiplier of knowing where our personnel are for when they find somebody in a building. in a fire, earthquake, flood, active shooter, whatever the IDLH environment is caused by. And so great, it's going to be valuable. The other question I want to get to is the goal of this challenge is to be collaborative in nature, to bring the startups, funding teams, enterprise teams, and public safety agencies to the table. Anything in particular on where you think teams might start getting involved and how they might approach public safety agencies?
Wow, Kirk, that's a good question. I think that oftentimes you'll find most agencies being willing to engage in the development process, right? And certainly we can real world it when there's a technology or a concept that is being tested. There's always issues of, risk and liability and all of that, but I see those generally, my experience has been those you can navigate fairly easily. The issue always comes down to cost and what is required of an agency. Again, my experience, I've worked both in a municipal structure as well as now in a special district structure, which are different for a variety of reasons, and not only governance, but your funding and what's available, very, very different. But even in a district where I feel as though we have more latitude and more available funding, a lot of that is already committed. Obviously, anywhere between about 85 and 87% of our budget is just personnel costs. And so when we look at the actual available discretionary funding, once we back out, other costs like fuel and, kind of the day-to-day bread and butter costs, what we have left is very little. And so that's the environment, I think, that the companies who are bringing these technologies or these technology concepts essentially to market, when they're looking for alternative funding streams, at least in part or whole, to support this, that's the challenge for public agencies, is that we're not structured or really set up to be a good funding stream where we're really able to support the development of the technologies by field testing, by critical feedback to the vendor, hopefully shaping how that development proceeds and ultimately what the value of the product is in the end.
Yeah, I absolutely agreed. And the other expense, if you will, and cost is in time that all of my colleagues and friends and in public safety around the world, there's a bandwidth challenge, especially with COVID or following the Great Recession here in the US, there's a bandwidth challenge that there's just the bell keeps going off. There's calls still to go on, and it's a challenge. But it's good to hear you say that that agencies, in general terms, are open to the discussion and want to be helpful in that capacity. And that's the goal of the challenge, is to have the voice of the end user be available to these teams as they move their technology readiness level from maybe applied research today to in 2023, when they give out the $1 million, that it's a fieldable unit. It's ready to go to the operators and make a difference in the heat of the moment, if you will, the time intervention.
Kirk, I know another kind of piece to this that I think about from time to time is if this was the private sector, there would be a lot more opportunity with venture capitalists. But the marketplace for the public safety sector is much smaller. We're not like the Department of Defense if we're talking about a comparison of a government agency where the number of units that you're buying creates a volume that makes that kind of a sustainable option. But when you're talking about local government, much more challenging. But in a perfect world, if you could marry the developer and a venture capitalist and a public safety agency together, that's kind of, in my mind, a perfect marriage.
Yeah, and my hope is that the teams will build it for the masses, right? Of almost 8 billion souls, there's 4.5 billion people connected on maybe 50 billion devices, is build it for everyone else and harden it, make it reliable, encrypt it, multiple layers of security for first responders. But let's first get to we're looking for a meter accuracy. We'll do the trials with the first challenge, and really great to have you on the call today with us, Chief Tubbs. Any closing thoughts before I know you get back to your day-to-day operations?
Well, first, Kirk, I want to thank you for reaching out to me. Kevin, you as well. I mean, I always appreciate and I'm humbled, when we get these kinds of calls and we have the opportunity to interact and to talk about technology and emerging technology and how we can capitalize on that. And being able to be a contributor to that, I think it's just such a privilege. So thank you for that. And then I guess lastly, I would just say, thank you for your attention to this. I think you've heard from all the fire chiefs. Personnel accountability is a priority of every fire chief and certainly his staff. And anything that we can do to continue to leverage technology to provide the accuracy to hopefully increase the safety of our firefighters, that's a no-brainer. And we need to be at the table having that discussion, and we need to get that technology out as soon as we can.
Chief Tubbs, thank you so much for your time today and your contributions and your ongoing leadership in the fire service, and excited to see how we can bring this technology and use chiefs like yourself and the departments to deploy it and bring it to the field after it's been market tested and proven through the first challenge.
Thank you, Kevin. And thanks for all the work you and your team are doing as well. Much appreciated. It's important stuff.
Thanks for your support of the challenge, sir.
Thank you, Kirk. You both have a great day. And again, thanks for reaching out. This was a real privilege.
So grateful to have Chief Nam with us. Chief, you've been absolutely a mentor and somebody I've idolized your knowledge on building construction for a long time, and I believe 45 years in the industry. Really grateful to have you here today. Thank you.
Oh, you're certainly welcome. My pleasure.
Thanks. And as you tour around, well, the nation, if not the world, I'm not sure how far your work goes at talking to first responders about building construction and the related processes when we're in the act of putting the wet stuff on the red stuff. My guess is you've considered that knowing where personnel are is important. Is there any particular calls you've been involved with or investigations you've been on or something like that where or maybe several that you might want to speak on the importance of knowing X, Y, and Z location?
Well, I think as we have become more sophisticated and meaning we, the fire service and the profession itself, for the entire ancillary and the primary areas of the fire protection profession, we have become more astutely aware of the dramatic needs that are imposed upon us to know where our personnel are within the built environment. And when we talk about the 3D elements of a built structure and occupancy, I think the pinnacle element in our generation of the fire service were the issues that came out of the Worcester fire in 1999. We've always known that there's been challenges regarding identifying the location, the proximity, the movement of our personnel, and the challenges that come about as a result of that from firefighter fatalities and line of duty deaths. So there's been two things that have been folded into this over the last 25 to 30 years. I think first and foremost, the exposure in 1999, both in terms of technology regarding the event in Worcester. So in December of 1999, the Worcester mass fire occurs. We lose 6 firefighters in a old structure, building of type 3, type 4 construction, which had some significant challenges at best to it, of which those challenges were well known to the department for many, many years. And the tie-in here from a technology standpoint is that we, the fire service, became aware of that event rather quickly due to the emergence of the internet at that time. And firehouse.com in its early days, as it was being developed at that point in time, gave us some almost as close to real time at that time frame of information. So we got very much more knowledge, much more insights as the event was occurring. So now we fast forward, that event and its anniversary has recently come about, and what has transpired through NIOSH reports, near-miss reports, line of duty deaths, both nationally and internationally, continues to stress the importance of personnel location, personnel activities, movement within the structure, coupled with all of the other needs from a building intelligence, an information standpoint system. So we have this continuing movement of personnel, activities, operations, and the continuing risk that the built environment is imposing upon us. So, I think that all in all, we all have those events that we personally can relate back to from the job on an individual or regional basis, our own close calls. And then when we start percolating that back up to the state and then to the national level, I think we have all become much more literate to the incidences, the close calls, and those that actually did result in very adverse events, either the close call near miss injuries or the adverse events that led to either single or multiple line of duty deaths as a either direct or corollary result of movement through the building. And that's why when we take a look at the whole issues dealing with I-axis movement, all of the elements of a 3D element in that built environment, it's easy to start tracking and implementing some of the technology that's been around for quite a while in terms of just physical movement across a particular plane. It's when we get into the challenges of that vertical and into the I-axis elements that I think we're discussing and moving towards, that becomes a challenge, coupled with the other challenge is that we may have some technology available to us and some understandings, but now we've got building issues that continue to stress us to no end in terms of materials and technologies and methods of construction and so on and so forth. So we are learning, and I think we're accepting the challenge to, hey, let's find a better way to figure this all out, and let's not wait until tomorrow. Let's move forward through some initiatives and actions. And I think some of those initiatives are what we are going to be talking about here right in the next get-go here, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's so great to know that competitors are putting forward their letters and just so you know a little more background, it is a 5-phase challenge. The final prize will be $1 million or more, and there'll be no elimination in the first couple rounds. And then people will be able to go and field test their equipment, denied infrastructure, right? They'll have to be able to do it all on their own. And it really inspiring to be able to speak to such an expert in this. I'm thinking back to when I started, we moved from just the captain having the radio to everyone having the radio. And we thought that would fix it. Well, no, it doesn't. And then we moved to a Velcro fireground accountability tracking tag. So allegedly we knew who was on which apparatus at any given time. Is this going to fix it? Well, it's a good step, but it's not going to fix it. And this is one facet of the greater ecosystem. And so for our startups and our enterprise teams and first responder agencies who partner on this, and the intent is to have it be one big collaboration, and there'll be siloed teams, but everyone's welcome to play together. Any wisdom from you on how do you get, like maybe a multi-jurisdiction, a big drill? How do you get different agencies to work together on a big drill? This is a big drill with money on the table to know where our personnel are. Any advice on bringing together various teams?
I think anyone that has some potential opportunities afforded to them through this particular activities, number one, first needs to not be afraid to venture out. Tapping the technology, there are many metropolitan areas, both large and small cities to the large urban environments that have incubator units of business and technology-based enterprises. And those are typically the first point in contact that I always try to seek out. I always monitor some of the business journals, the activities, and certainly in our metropolitan area to see what's sort of gelling, what's coming up, what's percolating, what's the newest academia concept that has come out of academia that now has been put into the incubator per se within these particular tech basins. And as a result of that, these startups have tremendous ideas, enthusiasm, and insights that are not challenged or limited by some of the self-imposed paradigms that we have. So in other words, the sky's the limit, and they are moving forward and creating some very innovative thought processes and elements, or I'm trying to think, it's not so much the hardware, but the conceptual elements and its application and whatever it is that they are selling, building, or developing, again, both hard and soft. I think the fire service in particular, when we talk about that profession, needs to reach out to the other ancillary businesses, the startup, the incubators, the technology gardens that are out there, and ask some questions about, hey, what is it that you're doing? And here's, or more importantly, ask the question, here's what we have the challenges of, and have an open type of question. Here's what the challenges are. What is it that you guys can bring forward? Or what is it that you're doing that can suddenly be that drop of that puzzle piece that fits in, that starts creating the mosaic of the picture? So that is first and foremost, because they are typically the cutting edges of what's occurring, and they're doing it in such a very quiet, unencumbering manner. They're out there. We just don't know about it. So I think the traditional standpoint of collaborations that are formal and so forth within the fire service profession are challenging at best and no longer applicable. We really have to leap and bound ourselves outside of that type of formality. And I would also state to do so in an unofficial manner. So it's not so much to open up those official channels. Sometimes it's just a cold phone call by a particular individual of rank or without rank, and just ask some questions and start lighting that fire, because you would be surprised at what can suddenly transpose and become identified over a cup of coffee, or just an innocuous, hey, yeah, come on down to our office. And you're moving all of it almost looks like the frat house type of environment, but it is that kind of synergy that exists within these environments, that the collaboration is almost immediate. I would say this, I had the opportunity to have some conversations with a notable startup here not too long ago, and coming in as the fire service outsider, although they were dealing with fire service related issues, very similar to what we're discussing here on this particular segment. They knew about the fire service, they knew about some of the players, but never had the opportunity to talk to some of us face to face. So number one, they were thrilled at doing that. And then they're trying to, again, connect what they envision conceptually, as well as those elements that are in the prototypical standpoint. And they're trying to understand our lexicon, but the more we talk to them, the more they're becoming confident in what they're trying to identify, to get us to understand more. And then the more they talk, the more we are recognizing that they may not apparently see the potential. And that is so great, because it's like that smoke lifts and we suddenly are seeing some things that they aren't seeing, or they suddenly see some things only because they have gotten clarity on terminologies and applications and some things that they just don't know about. You know, when we bring our whatever length of time on the job, and certainly the 2030, I think when you surpass the 20-year mark, so the fire service over the last 20 years is what it is. But the fire service and where it's come from the 90s, and certainly if I talk about the 80s and 90s, so that 20-year period in combination with our current 20-year period, that 40-year span of technology and advancements and moving forward, it's sort of, we have to understand where we've come from, what we've developed, why we went down certain paths. We sort of understand that decision tree process. It also provides the opportunity to not try to reinvent the wheel and just move forward in such an expeditious manner. I mean, leaps and bounds. And again, it's such a thrilling thing to see when these entrepreneurs have a idea in concept and are really struggling or trying very diligently to get proof in process, and they just don't understand the emergency management fire protection system other than what they've read and maybe had a few conversations with some of us. But there's not enough of us that have been able to influence them to move them forward. So it's a little bit of a bunch of things. And Kirk, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, you know, it's exactly where we're at. And I think we just have to be able to talk a little bit about it and then open up to what they're providing and then just continuously connect these dots. So if anybody has these ideas on either side of the fence, the entrepreneurs, the fire service, and any ancillary or direct areas on the fire service profession, it's just a matter of a phone call or face-to-face. And I think the face-to-face is first and foremost, but sometimes that text message or phone call or whatever it may be, just to open the doors, that first step, and then just move forward. Don't be afraid.
I really appreciate, and I'm going to hand it to Kevin. I really appreciate your encouraging and welcoming tone. You know, like the average firehouse. knock on the door, door opens.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I have them, take a minute? Oh, absolutely. You want to be in the apparatus room, or you want a cup of coffee at the round table, and come on in. So thank you for that. And I know Kevin's got a question.
Sure.
We're also watching your time. I know you've got some other things to get to, Chief. Thank you so much.
We're good. We're good.
One thing that stuck with me there when your comments, Chief, was the conversation on engaging with ancillary organizations. So that could be civilians, residential households, and businesses. And you've seen the rise of electric cars and now in the solar panels. And while these are all great, there's all these different externalities that are caused when we introduce something new. And oftentimes it always seems to come back and sit in. It's always the first responders that are the one that are kind of holding the bag, dealing with what happens when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And within this, I'd like to kind of get your spin on this with the focus on indoor tracking and knowing where first responders are inside of a building in regards to proximity to being able to better suppress a fire with the proximity, knowing where to actually get in or get out. Why is indoor tracking something that is so important to allow first responders to better respond and just better serve the community at large within the constantly changing landscape?
Well, when we talk about indoor tracking, we talk about location-based services, or LBS. NAPSG, as one organization we've been working very closely with NIST, has really been trying to identify best practices. So number one, there are a lot of things occurring on the national landscape that are moving that ball forward. I think we all can attest to the need for efficiency within the built environment, especially when we talk about location-based services, both from a suppression and rescue standpoint. Number one, we need to better serve our civilian public, both in the public setting as well as in the private residential setting, a variety of different occupancies, to be able to initiate actions in a more expedited standpoint. In other words, our tactical window of operation continues to be drawn smaller and smaller, which gives us limiting opportunities to do two things: potentially save a life, and secondly, to suppress, control, and mitigate ensuing fire conditions. The other part of that is the challenges of the built environment regarding the complexities of construction and the usage of various types of materials, and the continuing evolving state of architecture, engineering, fire protection, and building usages. So buildings are becoming more complex, whether you talk about a single family residential or a super tall high rise. And with that being said, we on the fire service side of it need to be much more efficient in that capability. Therefore, that need for the ability to track movement of personnel in terms of safety of our personnel, I think it's behooving of us to have what was predicated back in the 80s with Chief Alan Brunacini, who talked about risk management and safety. So safety in the mid 80s was a coined phrase in a variety of standpoint that has evolved significantly into a functional area in many different elements. So life safety, risk management of the public, life safety, risk management of the fire suppression forces that are dealing with incidences within the building. And again, it's all hazard related elements, but it's so critical as the complexity of the building increases. Our need to manage those resources in a safe manner in a very hostile environment that is becoming much more risk prone, that further puts demands on the life safety of our people. I mean, we can no longer be tolerant to the increasing civilian loss of life, nor can we be tolerant to a firefighter line of duty deaths. We have technology that can be adaptive or directly designed for its application. We just need to be keenly aware of how that application can help us. So I go back to some of the elements with NAPSG in particular that we have, and the reason I say this is that I've had the opportunity to work with NAPSG and the good folks that are in collaboration with NIST in that standpoint to help identify those best practices. And those best practices are being developed and born for the ability for the fire service in particular, or any of the emergency service and emergency management organizations, whether it be law enforcement, military support, direct support, and so forth. Number one, to understand it. And that actually comes back on the heels. I think, Kurt, when I listened in on the roundtable for Op Central, the references back to the NIST special publications, that research roadmap for smart firefighting, which again is it's almost 7 years old in terms of its publication back in 2015, but it gave us the roadmap for those that were intuitive enough to recognize what was out there to hopefully set us up. Well, the same thing with NAPSIG and the National Alliance for Public Safety, that whole I-axis movement of identifying what is it that we can do, whether it be from a mapping standpoint, consistency and symboling, the best practices of what already has been developed and implemented so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just build upon those successes and move forward. It goes back, I think, Kevin, to one of the things that you mentioned is that the fire service has always been much more reliant on soak time. In other words, something comes out, hey, we can't act upon it too quickly. Let's take some time to let it all sink in and soak in. Let's see what our neighbors are doing. Let's see what this department is doing across the country, down the street, wherever it may be. I don't think we have that luxury anymore. We have the immediacy of taking something that's out there and seeing how it can be applied to our particular jurisdictions. And that, I think, is critical to any success. Adapt the technology, adapt the concepts and the elements of what's before us, adapt it to your needs. Don't so much try to shoehorn it in, but manipulate it so that you're taking the best of what is being provided to meet your particular challenges currently, and then those challenges that may be coming about in the not too distant future as you project it outwards. But when you're waiting for some of that magic product or process to suddenly drop in to meet your particular municipality or fire protection district or city or municipal needs, it'll never happen, because there's always going to be something that was developed for one group or one particular area, and it's not going to always be homogenous. So we can't be afraid to invest the time and energies and the financial elements there to see what we can do. And don't be afraid to also say, hey, look, it didn't work. Let's go to the next particular product or idea and concept and so forth to see what works. We've got to be very open toward it, and we can't be afraid of what technology is providing us. And we're seeing it. We're so quick to say, oh my gosh, the sky is falling with whatever the newest technology may be, whether it be, and again, if we stop and think about the trends of various types of fuel sources and vehicles over the last 25 years, Kurt, and you know this. So the last 25 years, we've seen some major changes going from just gas energy fueled devices to an entirely different type of system all the way to where we are now. And at each stage, with each particular evolution of technology, everybody kept saying, well, this is what's going to happen and how are we going to handle the emergencies and the fires and life safety and so on and so forth. But guess what? We handled it pretty well, pretty safely. It's just a matter of stop from becoming so resistant to these changes and really embrace it. And I think that part of it is literacy. We just need to understand it. And again, I can't stress enough about just staying abreast of what a variety of different individuals and organizations are communicating online. I think the research information, again, I revert back to research roadmap for smart firefighting as being one of the primers in getting that understanding, although it's a little bit aged, but it's still a good starting point to sort of see where we're at for those that don't know where we're at. And again, just open up. So I'm very, very encouraged by this initiative. And more so, I would encourage those that are listening and those that are thinking about, hey, do I really have a product that can meet the needs? And I don't want to, have this initiative fall flat without taking it all the way to, testing and potential piloting. I think we've got to be very bold with our initiatives. And I would encourage those entrepreneurs and those that have whatever that product may be, especially when we talk about the aspects here of tracking systems in particular. They are much needed within our built environment. And again, I can't stress the need from the smallest department all the way to the largest urban department, even on an international basis. Kurt, you asked about some involvement. I've seen and had the ability to collaborate and and really take a look at a lot of things on a very large scale, high urban environment. The needs are paramount in those particular jurisdictions and urban areas, but they also end up landing back down to the smallest little department in the heartland of America, of which some of that technology can be applicable, can be financially and budget accessible if we collaborate and just work these things and scale it back up to a larger level. So some cool stuff.
Oh, so awesome to get your comments, Chief. Really inspiring on so many levels. Thanks for mentioning the MIST roadmap, from Casey Grant and the NIST and NFPA teams. It's still very relevant in my mind, right? We haven't built it. So, right, well, it may be going on 7 years old. It still needs to be done. I know you have another call to get to. Before your closing thought, I wanted to mention, I just talked to a big city firefighter who's saying, yeah, my captain says when we get to the fire floor, whatever it is, maybe it's the 5th floor, we get to the fire floor, there's active fire. They want 2 things, water and information. And your last response was perfect to understand how the firefighter's location, albeit one piece of that puzzle, it's some information that's going to be useful on this really, really important ecosystem. So thank you for your comments, Chief.
Oh, you're surely welcome.
I know you've got other things to run to. Any closing comments and again, and with appreciation.
Kirk, I think when we talk about being able to track and locate our personnel, that significant resource, coupled with the whole building information management modeling and other elements, we have gone so far beyond just pre-fire planning and having a little bit of what we used to call building intel. It has mushroomed into something so much more than that. I think the concepts and many of the other attributes that come out of smart firefighting and the whole elements that are drawn out of it are going to give us the necessary tools as we continue to move forward in the years ahead to be able to continue to provide the service to the public at large and to those that work within our particular municipalities and cities and urban environments, whatever that environment may be, just to be able to do smart firefighting, for better words, with a variety of different inputs. At the end of the day, it's much more than just stretching the line and going in blindly. It really has to become smart firefighting in such a vast standpoint. And there's just so much to that, those couple of words, right? Smart firefighting has so many different elements, but I think the level of importance of understanding where we're at within that hostile environment or any environment, as it goes from a safe environment to an IDLH or a hazardous environment, just takes a lot of information, and we have accessibility to so much of that information. But at the end of the day, too, I have the accessibility of that information, but the importance of knowing where our personnel are and being able to command, control, and initiate the right actions comes about through good information exchange, communications that's still going to manually place our personnel in that environment. And I think that actually is sort of going to be my end term here, is that when we talk about knowing where they're at in that environment and what they're doing, and just having smart firefighting, at the end of the day, we still have to place our personnel in these hostile environments. Manual firefighting will never completely go away. So there really is the cusp of why this is so important when we talk about personnel locations and location-based systems within that environment. We need to know where they're at. We need to have an appreciation of what they're going to be doing and how they're going to be doing it in order to maintain their safety. So we're always going to be in buildings. I can never see us not being in them. And again, there's a lot of caveats to that, so hopefully our audience understands it, but we're going to be in those environments doing some different things. And it's going to be critical for incident managers and emergency managers, both on the fire and emergency management side, to understand where those resources may be, especially as the incident continues to evolve into a larger, more complex condition. So it may be just that small single floor commercial fire on the 50th floor. It may be that single couple of room apartment on the 80th floor of a high rise. It may be that massive commercial fire in a couple of rooms on a 3 or 4,000 or a 3 or 4 million square foot commercial complex that has a large footprint. So it's out there. We just need to put it all together. So I think it's phenomenal. I really encourage our listeners to move forward with the initiative. I really thank both of you for allowing me to talk a little bit of it. And I really look forward to seeing what comes out of the potential awardees. I mean, this is going to be phenomenal. So thanks so very much. And again, you can see my enthusiasm. This is all great stuff when we talk about built environment, firefighting, protecting the public. And then more importantly, the initiative that this is providing. I mean, we have a phenomenal opportunity for those that are hopefully going to take the challenge and put their best foot forward with their ideas and concepts and just move that ball all the way downfield. So thanks again, guys.
Thank you so much, Chief. I can see the letters being written right now to apply. Thank you. I'm
Thanks,
really looking
Chief.
forward to seeing.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Kirk. Really appreciate
Have a great day,
it.
sir.
Talk
Thank
to you guys later. Thanks again.
Okay.
Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it. Take care.
Well, I'd like to thank all our speakers that gave their heartfelt and expert opinions on how important it is to have the X, Y, and Z location of first responders in the time of intervention and in the heat of the moment when lives are in the balance and time is fleeting. I'd like to thank those who have been watching and considering, do they want to be part of this really, really important challenge that happens to have $5.6 million at the table, more than $1 million for a first place prize. See if you can get to meter accuracy. Please join the challenge. To my co-host, Kevin, thank you so much for being part of this. Any final words from you?
Yeah, and I think a couple of things that we heard today, a couple of key phrases: focus on the outcome. Don't be afraid to just be a piece of the puzzle. There are many different dynamics going on in the whole realm of entrepreneurship, and this is a problem that has a lot of different factors. So if you got an idea, and even if it's something still just on a napkin sketch, come to the table. As you look on the screen here, $5.6 million. It's a lot more than $0, and that money is out there for you to get it. So if you're an entrepreneur or even just someone that has an idea, come to the table. The first challenge needs you, and we're excited to see you, and can't wait to see this whole challenge come to life.
Yeah, and to the public safety agencies out there, get a personnel, spend a few hours with the competitors, and help them help you save a life.